And I think we figured out what went wrong. So we'll see. Check. Oh yeah, I'm ready to go. 4:59. So as is my custom, when the Cowboys have a 3:30 kick, I have no idea what's going on in the game. I assume it's bad at this point of the season, but we don't know. So it's don't ask, don't tell with regard to Cowboys scores and highlights. Okay, well, welcome to everybody online. Hopefully you can hear us. Somebody say woohoo online if you can hear us. All right, get a thumbs up. No Cowboys scores online, right, exactly. Okay, so is there anything that is lingering, any open questions, anything we need to touch on before we dive into a book that I really do love? People have a love-hate relationship with Ecclesiastes for different reasons than they have a love-hate relationship with Revelation, but it's similarly love-hate-ish because of the way the material is presented. But before we get into that, any thoughts, any concerns, So at some point, I don't know, maybe after the Bible study's over, if you want to, the Christmas trees and all that are up in the sanctuary. We've got new decorations. We had a donor give for some decorations, and it looks amazing. And it wasn't my idea to decorate early for Christmas, although, of course, I'm always okay to decorate for Christmas. The room where we meet for senior staff has been decorated for Christmas for like a month, right? But the way we're doing the filming of music and stuff for Christmas, we needed the decorations up because they have to be up when you watch them on Christmas Eve. And so, anyway, they're down there if you want to check it out. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So I'm Christmas Eve. I'm always up for answering Christmas Eve questions. So we are going to have, as it stands now, unless everything gets locked down again, we will be having in person in the sanctuary, and Jason and I are going to do a video about this in a few weeks. We're going to send it out early December. We do encourage people to register early because we really have no idea if the spaces are going to fill. So we'll have a schedule beginning at 11 o'clock here in Table of Grace like last year, and then all the way to 11 p.m. in the sanctuary. We are going to have an outdoor service as well. That's the plan, right? That's the kids one, okay. But then at 6:30 we're also going to have yeah. So you can come at 6:30, which is always our big service. Inside, if you register while there's room. Outside, if you would prefer to be outside. And we are planning on doing candles, but I think we settled on the like tea lights, like the ones you light up. You know what I mean? So you don't have to get next to somebody you're not related to, because we want to make sure we're following all of our protocols. So we still will sing Silent Night. We have something really special cooked up for the online service for people who aren't comfortable coming. And honestly, I would highly recommend, even if you come to one of the in-person services, watch at 6:30. It's going to be awesome. So yeah, it's going to be a different Christmas, of course. Hopefully this will be the only one we do like this. But it'll still, in some ways, feel pretty familiar. Okay, Ecclesiastes. So Ecclesiastes is the next up in the canon. Just as a reminder, we're going front to back in what's called canonical order. So the books of the Bible in the order in which they appear in the Bible, and we're alternating between Old and New Testaments. So it just so happens that when you lay out that pattern, all the wisdom stuff is pretty close together. And James, which is the wisdom book in the New Testament, is in the same order. That's just totally providential. I didn't plan it that way. So Ecclesiastes is attributed to Solomon, as most stuff in the the wisdom tradition is, but most scholars date it pretty late. And if we were doing like a Hebrew word study and all that, I could point out some specific words. But most scholars date it between the years 300 and 200 BC. So that's after the exile, and that's among the latest books in the Old Testament. The Hebrew word that gets translated as Ecclesiastes in Greek is Koheleth. Kohelet is how you pronounce it. And that means teacher or preacher in Hebrew, in the original language. As you read through Ecclesiastes, there are the various wisdom forms. There are proverbs in here, there are parables, and they're just straight up admonitions. We're going to focus more on the last one, admonitions, today. The rabbis actually had a pretty spirited debate about whether or not Kohelet should even be in the Bible. And that's because of some of the issues that people have with this book. It can seem, it's your second bullet point there, under themes, it can seem like the work of a skeptic or even the work of a pessimist if you read it a particular way. Ultimately, it ended up being included in the canon because it was attributed to Solomon, even though now we know it was not written by Solomon. But that's how it ended up in the canon. And there's a really interesting quote that I decided to include from my Old Testament kind of intro book. And Lawrence Boat wrote this book. It's a long time, it's an old book. But Ecclesiastes teaches the great gulf between the transcendent God and our human striving to understand and so to control him. In the end, Ecclesiastes' message is one with that of Job. Trust and surrender yourself to God's loving care, even if you cannot know where it will lead. Which is great advice. But to me, when I read Ecclesiastes, particularly when you read it in the context of the whole canon, to me, it's the most Eastern of the books, like philosophically speaking. It's almost got it does not have a Zen quality. It's a whole different tradition, centuries apart, half a world apart, but it ends up reading in a very Zen-like way where we're best left to focus on what we have here and now and not worry about life's contradictions and difficulties. So you could almost read it as you remember Job. Job's, the lesson of Job is, look, there's just some stuff that's above your pay grade, Job. Some stuff that you just don't get to know. And I know that's frustrating, but that's the way life is. There's God and there's not God. There's God, it's not me. And the clearer I am about that, the more serenity I can have in my life. It's a similar type message in Ecclesiastes. And there's some passages of Ecclesiastes that are just sublime, in my opinion. And then there's some passages of Ecclesiastes that are kind of tough advice, I think, and we'll get to some of those. So the themes, life's limits and contradictions, well, that'll be clear as we read. And then, as I said, so critics of Ecclesiastes, people who do not like Ecclesiastes, would call it the work of a skeptic or a pessimist. I actually think it's the work of a realist, kind of holding life in tension, that sometimes things aren't great. And so the more focused I am on the here and now, the happier I'm going to be in this life. And that leads to the third point, which is the focus on the present. The other interesting thing about the book to me is, just like Job, I don't know if you remember back to Job a few weeks ago, there was a tacked on ending to Job. So there's the story of Job, which really the point of that story is Job says, okay, uncle, I don't get to know. And then there's this tacked on ending where he gets all his stuff back, you remember? Except times 2 or 3. There's also an appendix added by an editor that, some scholars would say, well, that was the rabbis deciding to put in this book, even though it seems very different theologically than much of the rest of the Old Testament, but to add this appendix where it reminds us to focus on the fear of the Lord. So I'll point that out when we get there. Okay, so we're not going to read, there's 12 chapters of Job. We're not going to read all of it. We're going to jump around a little bit, but we'll do it in order. So we're going to start in chapter 1. We're going to read the first 2 chapters. Okay, the words of the teacher, that's Koheleth, Q-O-H-E-L-E-T-H. Could be teacher, could be preacher. My translation here says teacher. So the words of the teacher, the son of David. The son of David just means a king. Doesn't necessarily mean Solomon. Solomon's not named in the book. King in Jerusalem. Okay, here we go. And I'm interested to hear what everybody else's translation says. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. All right, now that sounds kind of bleak, right? But the Hebrew there literally means breath or breeze. So when you interpret it like the NRSV does as vanity, that kind of sounds pessimistic, right? That's an editorial, that's a translation choice to use that word. I think of it as, and this is the reason I don't use this word, ephemerality. Like it's the passing nature of life. It's not that everything is meaningless, it's that everything is temporary. Does that make sense? So, what do other translations say in verse 2? Meaningless. It comes out and says meaningless. Okay. That's a very specific interpretive decision. Anybody else? Anybody else got vanity? Okay. So vanity of vanity, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What do people gain from all the toil at which they toil under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hurries to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north, and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full to the place where the streams flow. There they continue to flow. All things are wearisome, more than one can express. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Did you know that's a biblical phrase? It's kind of true, right? Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It's already been in the ages before us. The people of long ago are not remembered, nor will there be any remembrance of people yet to come by those who come after them. I, the teacher, when king over Israel and Jerusalem, applied my mind to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to human beings to be busy with. I saw all the deeds that are done under the sun, and see, all is, and I'm just going to change it, all is temporary and chasing after wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight. What is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my mind has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge, and I applied my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this also is but a chasing after wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and those who increase knowledge increase sorrow. So there's this ethos that runs through Ecclesiastes that in the end, everything kind of balances out. And I think we probably all know this intuitively, even if we don't. Like there are no easy answers for the vagaries of life, for the complexities of life. I love the phrase, the more I learn, the less I know, right? I mean, there's a sense in which the more experience we have in life, oftentimes, I think this is a healthy way to live. The more experience we have in life, the more we realize that our knowledge is limited, right? Like when I was a 20-year-old, I had it all figured out, right? I mean, I think most of us, like, we feel bulletproof. We feel like we think much more in black and white. And the older we get and the more people we meet and the more experiences we have, we realize that life really is just not that simple. And to me, when I read Ecclesiastes, when I read the perspective of like the character who's speaking here, regardless of who put these words down, is he's an old man, and he's experienced, and he's had plenty of success, and he's had plenty of sorrow, and in the end, he comes to the conclusion that experiencing life one day at a time is actually the healthiest way for him to have lived. And it's like he's giving advice to his younger self. Because remember, part of the point of wisdom is to pass on how to live to younger generations. That's the point of this type of literature. And so a couple weeks ago, we read, when we were talking, what were we talking about? Proverbs, I guess. There's this kind of charming tale in the writings of the rabbis where they say that Song of Solomon was what he wrote as a young man in his kind of emotional youth, and then Proverbs is what he wrote in experienced middle age, and Ecclesiastes is what he wrote looking back on his life. That's the sense that I get. And so it's a little, I mean, I understand why all translation is interpretation. I understand why, like, meaningless. I get why that, like, maybe in that verse it means that in that particular context, but in the whole book, when you look at the whole book, it's a much more balanced view of what we all know, which is that no matter how many years we have on this earth, it goes by like that. And in the end, however much knowledge we have, wisdom teaches us that we're never going to know it all. Okay, chapter 2. I said to myself, come now, I will make a test of pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But again, this was also temporary, is what I'm going to say. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my mind how to cheer my body with wine, my mind still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly until I might see what was good for mortals to do under heaven for the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. I also had great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and of the provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and delights of the flesh and many concubines. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had spent in doing it, and again all was temporary, and a chasing after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun, because you can't take it with you, right? So we spend too much time in the accumulation of stuff, and we miss the day-to-day experiences in front of us. We actually die impoverished for having missed all of the experiences that we could have been having. So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly, for what can the one do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Then I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads, but fools walk in darkness. Yet I perceived that the same fate befalls all of them. Then I said to myself, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said to myself that this also is vanity or temporary. For there is no enduring remembrance of the wise or of the fools, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. It's pretty melancholy. How can the wise die just like fools? So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me, and for all is vanity and chasing after wind. I hated all my toil in which I had toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to those who come after me, and who knows whether they will be wise or foolish. Yet they will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned and gave my heart up to despair concerning all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes one who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave all to be enjoyed by another who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What do mortals get from all the toil and strain with which they toil under the sun? For all their days are full of pain, and their work is a vexation. Even at night their minds do not rest. This also is vanity, temporary. There is nothing better for mortals than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in their toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and heaping only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a chasing after wind. So you see that third bullet point under themes. There's nothing, this will come up a few times, there's nothing better for mortals to do than eat and drink and find enjoyment in all their toil. Be in the now, is what he's saying. That sounds very New Agey, right? The present is a gift. You remember that old, what was that cartoon? The one-panel cartoon with the simple drawings. Gosh, what was that? Like a 1970s thing. Little kid says, like he's saying, don't worry about the future, don't worry about the past, all we have is the present, it's a gift. That's why they call it present. Anyway. Family Circle, that's what I'm trying to think of. You remember Family Circle? All right, I'm going to skip the first 8 verses of chapter 3 because we're going to end with that. That's what we all know from Ecclesiastes. And we're going to jump down to verse 9. What gain have the workers from their toil? I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. He has made everything, that says suitable, but really a better translation is beautiful, which I think is better. This is the kind of take life as it comes philosophy. He's made everything suitable, beautiful for its time. Moreover, he has put a sense of past and future into their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil. I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nothing can be taken from it. God has done this so that all should stand in awe before him. That which is already has been, that which is to be already is, and God seeks out what has gone by. So this is what Job gets at in a much lengthier way. there's this extended dialogue where God tells Job, well, where were you when I made the mountains and the seas and Leviathan, and like what were you doing when I decided when it was going to rain and when the sun was going to come up? Like this long poem of God making the point that there's a God, it's not you. And the faster you get to that realization, the happier you're going to be. And that, in fact, God does not owe us an explanation for anything, because the creature doesn't get to demand an answer from the Creator. I mean, that's the lesson of Job, and you can see that same kind of ethos here. Verse 16 now. Verse 16. Moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, wickedness was there. And in the place of righteousness, wickedness was there as well. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for he has appointed a time for every matter and for every work. I said in my heart, with regard to human beings, that God is testing them to show that they are but animals. For the fate of humans and the fate of animals is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, and humans have no advantage over the animals, for all is, again, temporary. All go to one place. All are from the dust. All turn to dust again. Who knows whether the human spirit goes upward and the spirit of animals goes downward to the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better than that all should enjoy their work, for that is their lot. Who can bring them to see what will be after them? So, I mean, I think it's pretty clear why people have a love-hate with Ecclesiastes. Like, if you read this in a melancholy way, then you can read it as, wow, nothing matters anyway. And some people do read it that way. But to me, it's much more about this kind of realistic view of life that ultimately we don't get to understand everything. Ultimately, all we have is what we have right now. And so if we live fully today as God's faithful with the people we love, then that actually is the way to live a peaceful life, to live a serene life. It is, you see why I'm saying it's the most Eastern of the books in the Old Testament. There's not a forward-looking, here's what's going to happen after I die. There's not a whole lot of, there's not a ton of moral teaching in here. It's about how we experience the life before us. How are we doing online? Okay, I'm going to skip 4 and 5 because that's kind of a list of, there's a whole bunch of Proverbs in there, and that gets a little tiresome to read. We'll go to 6. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy upon humankind. Those to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that they lack nothing of all that they desire, yet God does not enable them to enjoy these things, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity, temporary. It is a grievous ill. A man may beget 100 children and live many years, and however many are the days of his years, if he does not enjoy life's good things or has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For it comes into vanity and goes into darkness, and in darkness its name is covered. Moreover, it has not seen the sun or known anything, yet it finds rest rather than he. Even though he should live 1,000 years twice over, yet enjoy no good, do not all go to one place? He's saying, what good is it if you have all things and don't enjoy all things? Because you're going to be dust someday, and so you might as well not ever have been born. That's the wisdom of experience. And remember, he sets it up in chapter 1 by saying, look, I built everything like I'm the greatest ever king. This is why people attribute it to Solomon. And yet still, here I am at the end of my life, wondering where the years went. And hopefully the sense of regret that is implied, even if it's not kind of explicitly stated, should guide future generations that the pursuit of stuff in and of itself is not a source of happiness. Verse 7, all human toil is for the mouth, yet the appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage have the wise over fools? And what do the poor what do the poor have who know how to conduct themselves before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of desire. This also is vanity and a chasing after wind. Whatever has come to be has already been named, and it is known what human beings are, and that they are not able to dispute with those who are stronger. The more words, the more vanity, so how is one the better? For who knows what is good for mortals while they live the few days of their, again, temporary life, which they pass like a shadow, for who can tell them what will be after them under the sun? Okay, we're going to skip 7 and go to 8. Who is like the wise man, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? Wisdom makes one's face shine, and the hardness of one's countenance is changed. Keep the king's command because of your sacred oath. Do not be terrified. Go from his presence. Do not delay when the matter is unpleasant, for he does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is powerful, and who can say to him, what are you doing? Whoever obeys a command will know the time and way, for every matter has its time and way, although the troubles of mortals lie heavy upon them. Indeed, they do not know what is to be, for who can tell them how it will be? No one has power over the wind to restrain the wind, or power over the day of death. There is no discharge from the battle, nor does wickedness deliver those who practice it. All this I observed, applying my mind to all that is done under the sun, while one person exercises authority over another, to the other's hurt. Then I saw the wicked buried. They used to go in and out of the holy place and were praised in the city where they had done such things. This is also vanity, because sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily. The human heart is fully set to do evil. Though sinners do evil 100 times and prolong their lives, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God, because they stand in fear before him. But it will not be well with the wicked. Neither will they prolong their days like a shadow, because they do not stand in fear before God. There is a vanity that takes place on earth, that there are righteous people who are treated according to the conduct of the wicked, and there are wicked people who are treated according to the conduct of the righteous. I said that this also is temporary. So I commend enjoyment, for there is nothing better for people under the sun than to eat and drink and enjoy themselves, for this will go with them in their toil through the days of their life that God gives them under the sun. When I applied my mind to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, how one's eyes see sleep neither day nor night, then I saw all the work of God, that no one can find out what is happening under the sun. However much they may toil in seeking, they will not find it out, even though those who are wise claim to know, they cannot find it out. So this is the question of Job. How is it that the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper? We don't get to know. He's saying, I don't know. I, the wisest and most powerful king ever, don't know why that's true. And if I can't figure it out, chances are you can't either. So take each day as it comes. Enjoy what is in front of you and stop worrying about the answers to these questions. Like it or love it, that's what he's saying. We're going to keep going because this is the same kind of same passage here. Chapter 9. All this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God. Whether it is love or hate, one does not know. Everything that confronts them is temporary, since the same fate comes to all, to the righteous and to the wicked and to the good and to the evil, to the clean and to the unclean, to those who sacrifice and those who do not sacrifice. In other words, we all will return to the dust at some point. As are the good, so are the sinners. Those who swear are like those who shun an oath. This is an evil in all that happens under the sun, that the same fate comes to everyone. Moreover, the hearts of all are full of evil. Madness is in their hearts while they live, and after that they go to the dead. But whoever is joined with all the living has hope, for a living dog is better than a dead lion. The living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no more reward, and even the memory of them is lost. Their love and their hate and their envy have all perished. Never again will they have any share in all that happens under the sun. So go, eat your bread with enjoyment and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has long ago approved what you do. Let your garments always be white. Do not let oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the wife whom you love, all the days of your temporary life that are given you under the sun, because that is your portion in life and in your toil at which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do with your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you are going. It all depends on how you read it. That's either super depressing or super realistic.
I don't know if this is on. Because you talk about the idea of fearing God. I have always thought of it as respecting and even being in awe of God. Are they actually talking about being afraid of God? That seems like a barrier to a personal relationship.
Yeah. So the question, if you didn't hear it, is about the fear of God. Like, what does it mean, the fear of God? Is it about, like, being afraid of God? Or is it more of a respectful, worshipful relationship / view of God? And it's definitely the latter. It's not about being afraid. It's about honestly understanding there is a God. It's not me. There's a God who is the creator of the entire universe and understands all things, and here's me. And now for Christians, we add to that we are actually friends with God through Christ, that we are beloved children of God, that our destiny here and in eternity is assured because of Christ. So we have that layered on top of this very ancient text. But there's not, at this stage of our faith development, there's not the view of the afterlife that we have now. Now, by this point, there was an understanding of kind of a general resurrection of the dead at the end of time, at the day of the Lord. The righteous rise and are rewarded, the wicked do not. But there's not this concept of I die, I go to heaven yet. That's a Christian thing. And so the word that comes to me every time I read Ecclesiastes is acceptance. Accepting our lot, accepting things as they are, accepting life on life's terms is a phrase that I'm sure you've heard before. Because we can't do anything about it anyway. Like if I have a friend who cheats on his taxes and cheats his customers and lives in a $4 million house and drives a Lamborghini, and he clearly seems to be rewarded for what is not a righteous way of living, I can either spend a whole lot of time worrying about that, or I can do what I think is right. And the message of Ecclesiastes is stop worrying about what's happening with the wicked and the just. Like, just don't, the fairness thing, take it, just stop worrying about it, and you live your life the way you can. I actually love this passage. Enjoy life with the wife whom you love. You have a wife whom you love. That's pretty good. Enjoy life. And then all the days of your temporary life, balanced life is another way to think of that, but that's a more complicated concept, that you're given under the sun, because that is your portion in life and your toil at which you toil under the sun. Whatever you do, whatever you work at, like, enjoy your work. Do what you feel called to do. Do what you think God has equipped you to do. I'm kind of layering on some Christian interpretation on this. Because ultimately, our days here are temporary, and we all have the same destination. So we may as well enjoy life while it's here. Fear of the Lord allows us to do that because we trust. We're clear who the Creator is and who the creature is. We're clear that we don't get to have all the answers, and so we can just kind of focus on life as it comes. I love it. I love it. That's a very healthy way to live, in my opinion. Because, what ends up, like there's the question that Job answers also, that we talked about whenever that was, is theodicy. So there's an all-powerful God who is all-loving, and yet bad things happen, and that triangle doesn't seem to be able to be rectified, like to be reconciled. And so Job's response is, well, stop worrying about it. Like, just stop worrying about it. Don't be obsessed with the concept of fairness. Because ultimately, all of us who have kids have told our kids at some point life's not fair, right? Because the bully gets away with it, or the bully starts the fight and you finish the fight, but you get in trouble because they didn't see the bully start the fight. All that kind of stuff. Stop worrying about all that. Stop working the refs. Just worry about, you do your life. And this also shows up at the end of John's gospel. All comes back to John and Hamilton somehow. And that is where Peter is walking with Jesus on the beach in those last verses. And Jesus is like, look, man, things are going to get rough. They're going to, you're not going to meet a good end. Predicting the life, his crucifixion. And Peter said, okay, all right. Well, what about him? And he looks at the beloved disciple, John. And Jesus is like, stop worrying about him. You worry about you. You and I are in a relationship. Don't worry about what happens to that person. That's not your business. Same kind of ethos that comes through here. Okay. Let's jump to chapter 11, verse 7. Light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. Even those who live many years should rejoice in them all. Yet let them remember that the days of darkness will be many. All that comes depends on how you read it, temporary or vanity. This is the old story about the king. I'm sure I've told you this before, but the king has been told that there's a ring that has the power to make the most powerful man sad and the saddest man happy. You've heard this, right? So he sends his courtiers out to find this ring. He's got to have it. And they search. It's a long story, but they search and search. Finally, the night before the deadline, his right-hand man is in the old streets of Jerusalem, and he's looking distraught, and this old jeweler says, what's going on? So he tells him what he's looking for, and so he gives him a ring, and the right-hand man realizes, this is it. I found what the king desires. And he brings it to him, and it's a ring that's inscribed in the inside with the simple phrase, "This too shall pass." So on our happiest days, this too shall pass. On our saddest days, this too shall pass. Because life is, fleeting. Is that vanity? No, not really. I don't think so. But it is temporary. And so if we understand that, this is why the philosophy of Ecclesiastes, the theology of Ecclesiastes is so exceedingly practical. If we understand that, the moment where your kid is driving you crazy, they're not picking up their room and they're not doing what you want them to do, and it's just parenthood. well, this too shall pass. So you can either enjoy the moment and enjoy them as they are, because you're going to blink and they're going to be 14, taller than you, and about to be driving. Not that I'm saying anything personal right now. Or in the midst of this terrible loss, someone you love is dying of cancer. Well, yeah, that's awful. This too shall pass. And it's this view of life that if we just live it on its own terms in front of us, and I'm saying this because of what we just read, even those who live many years should rejoice in them all, yet let them remember that the days of darkness will be many. But those will be temporary. Verse 9, rejoice, young man, while you are young, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Follow the inclination of your heart and the desire of your eyes, but know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. This is the fear of the Lord thing. There's a creator, it's not you. Like you layer in some Christian stuff there, then it's like there is one to whom we must render an account. So live your best, most faithful life today that you can. Banish anxiety from your mind and put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are temporary. Don't be in a hurry to not be in high school anymore. Don't be in a hurry to graduate from college, right? This is so great. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come, and the years draw near when you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened and the clouds return with the rain, in the day when the guards of the house tremble and the strong men are bent, and the women who grind cease working because they are few. And those who look through the windows see dimly when the doors on the street are shut, and the sound of the grinding is low, and one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song are brought low. When one is afraid of heights and terrors are in the road, the almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper drags itself along, and desire fails, because all must go to their eternal home. And the mourners will go about the streets before the silver cord is snapped and the golden bowl is broken and the pitcher is broken at the fountain and the wheel broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the breath returns to God who gave it. Like, that's pretty hopeful. Our breath's going back to God. Well, that means that we do too. And then vanity of vanity, says the teacher, all is vanity. Yes, okay, but like, it doesn't exactly mean that. I've always had a struggle with that translation. Certainly meaningless. Is it meaninglessness in yours too? Like that's not fair to Kohelet, I don't think, you know? That's where it ended. That was the last verse. Because it ends there exactly the same way it started. It's called an inclusio. It's the fancy term for that. So he starts out by saying vanity is vanities. I'm going to spend 11 chapters telling you how that is. I'm going to close with the same reminder at the end of what really is a pretty beautiful, I think, passage. And then there's this epilogue that gets added, because I guess that's okay, but where's God in that? I mean, God is mentioned, so the breath returns to God. That's good. But, some preacher felt like they needed to add something else. So here it goes. Besides being wise, the teacher also taught the people knowledge, weighing and studying and arranging many proverbs. The teacher sought to find pleasing words, and he wrote words of truth plainly. The sayings of the wise are like goads, like nails, firmly fixed are the collected sayings that are given by one shepherd. Of anything beyond these, my child, beware. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. The end of the matter. All has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments. What? Where'd that come from? We haven't talked about commandments for 12 chapters. All of a sudden it shows up here at the end. For that is the whole duty of everyone. It's true. I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad advice. I'm just saying it's pretty inconsistent with what he said at this point. For God will bring every deed into judgment including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So, so that's like this coda that's added. Like you could, this is why the second ending of Job drives me to distraction. The point of the message of Ecclesiastes is stop worrying about it. It's above your pay grade. But then here at the end, we get if you're worried about it, just remember God's going to make it right in the end. Well, we all know that. But that gives us a license to keep worrying about it, like to keep scorekeeping. Who's good, who's bad? We have a bad habit of doing that anyway. Okay. We have like 10 minutes left. I've talked a lot, I know. Does this kind of approach to life, this kind of philosophy resonate? Or is it like, I don't think I need to read that again until the next Bible study? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, the interesting thing about chapter 3 is it's the same kind of thing. You're talking about the one we're going to read at the end? Yeah. Who sang that song? Something like that, right? Yeah, I thought, yeah. But it's the same, it's the exact same kind of thing. Sometimes, some days is new life, some days is death. It's death that we experience. Some days is great love, and some days is tremendous hatred, sorrow, whatever. Some days there's joy, some days there's tears. Some days it's both. like yesterday. Yesterday was a pretty emotional day, and people were experiencing that the opposite way. So he probably could have closed it with that. Yeah, just as a reminder. We're going to tonight.
Online thinks it's beautiful and has a good message.
Yeah, I agree. It's I don't know. I do think it's a hard lesson to learn. And I think, when I read this when I was in my early 20s, I experienced it very differently than I do now. About halfway to the finish line, feel like you've learned some stuff, but plenty we don't know.
Online apparently missed out on your Notre Dame and overtime talk, so they're asking you how you're feeling.
Oh, so if you were in worship this morning at 11 o'clock, my voice was just shredded. It's terrible. And it's not good for my preaching voice when Notre Dame plays a night game against the number one team in the country. So it is true. So they have not had that big a win in 27 years. So today's a pretty good day. They're number 2 in the rankings right now. We'll see how long that lasts, but that's not been our fate since I graduated from college many years ago now.
Someone also confirmed it's the birds.
The birds, okay,
yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, with a Y, if you were curious about that.
Okay.
Not an I. And then Jack asks, what's your favorite hymn?
My favorite hymn? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've got categories. Just general everyday hymn is Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. I love that. That's good for any time. Marching to Zion is a very close second. And then when we get into Christmas carols, that's kind of its own thing. Like I've got one for every season. So there was it's Make Me a Channel of Your Peace. It's an old Catholic hymn. From the 70s. I don't think it's that old, but I remember when it came out. And like every church, we sang it one time, and everybody's like, what's the new song? Nobody wants to know a new song until it becomes a beloved song. But she was a soprano. She was our choir leader, and the way that little church was, it was like how many people did that seat? I bet it didn't seat more than 200. And the choir was up in the loft behind us. And so it was always as we were coming forward for communion. We never did really sing it as a congregational song, at least not when it first came out, because, no one wants to learn a new hymn. Right? You know what I'm talking about. And so she would sing it, and she had just a gorgeous voice. And so she would do a solo part, and then the choir would sing it as well. And they just, we probably all have these experiences where you get these songs during some formative years, and they just settle in real deep. So the anthem today was not the same. It's the same text, but a different version. But the hymn, "Make Me a Channel of Your Peace," is, I think it's in the Faith We Sing, that little black insert. Okay. Okay, all right, very good. Well, I don't have any announcements really. Next week we're doing, what's next? What's after James? Oh, 1 Peter, are we doing both, first and second? Yeah, okay, good. That's got some good stuff in it. All right, well, we will close with this. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to stay socially distanced, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Amen. Thanks, y'all. Great to be with you. God bless you. Thanks, everybody online. Glad the sound worked out this week. Thank you, sound guys, Ben and Nick.